100 Reasons to Avoid the Student Loan Program.
Bosses won't help borrowers. Your loan servicer marriage will never be challenged by your bosses, but should be. Challenging a loan servicer to keep them honest and transparent, proper documentation and signatures, is an opportunity for assistance with regulatory oversight that is ignored. The education department's collection agencies call your bosses, even though sufficient information is available without a phone call. Employers who show any appearance of lacking full cooperation get noted as uncooperative in the education department's records, even when untrue. Violation of Christian forgiveness. God, Jesus, and the Constitution never taught us to hold people in our debt for their entire lives. Only the money worship religion teaches that. Certain actions are sins in nature, in religion, and in the governing of other humans because sins make us lose precious things. There are so many victim impact statements on so many websites for all to see that the bankrupt but educated need clergy to aid in the battle for access to higher education that has been won in the courts by lenders. Caesar shook democracy. Beware the leader who bangs the drums of war in order to whip the citizenry into a patriotic fervor. For patriotism is indeed a double edged sword. It both emboldens the blood just as it narrows the mind. Julius Caesar. Our military veteran and loan servicer marriage spawned a lawsuit against the loan servicer by the Department of Justice. Dirty profits. Jesus answered, "Render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and unto God the things that are God's." Education is naturally God's, a natural law. No one is more cynical than a grifter or a U.S. congressman, so we find them together for student loan profits. No privacy. Slaves don't get privacy. People without constitutional rights lose their privacy. Bankrupts lose their privacy because of the internet, a very high opportunity cost ignored under the student loan standard of living. Borrowers lose their spouses' and children's privacy because questions are asked about them to create any new monthly payment plan to cope. Because of lost privacy, the Education Department must be absolutely correct about any default declaration, but is careless instead. University leverage. America's golden eggs were not enough to feed medical schools, law schools, private schools, and for profit schools, so they closed or helped have courts remove constitutional protections from student borrowers who could not afford the tuition. Risk free loans freed universities to raise tuition and profit even more while increasing workforce competition. Inevitable worldwide competition created the need to retrain at the high cost of more tuition, a vicious downward spiral that keeps student loan customers coming. False debt verifications. The student loan industry keeps records very poorly, deliberately. The adversarial education department does not act to directly and quickly resolve damage to borrowers from lies told by schools and the loan servicers. Conflict of interest. The nation's educational loan database that accounts for 1.7 trillion in gambled taxpayer funds has false records created by guarantors who were later hired to be unpoliced loan servicer spouses. We know that the more any government program operates in the dark, the more likely it is to hide failures and resist any reform. The Education Department doesn't know the Federal Family Education Loan FFELP lenders. The Education Department doesn't know, blind spot, who the true FFELP lenders are because unauthorized private lenders securitize their private loans unlawfully in the dark to pretend they were federal risk-free loans. In 2012, the Education Department asked Congress to define lender to protect the department from the private lending market. The department failed to police lenders by looking at their documents and bank statements as required. Cover up. The Education Department covers up fraud and avoids discussing it. Universities follow that lead by failing to report crimes. Example, sex crimes. Borrowers need those statistics. Contract possession rule ignored. The Education Department no longer follows the physical possession of loan documents rules before collecting. This allows the department and the loan servicer to play with the definition of the word holder for loan servicer tennis. Since ownership cover-ups occur, maintaining the department's version of the holder rule is essential. Garnishment abuse. The Education Department uses unreliable national database records to garnish without a court order. FFELP loans are ripe for such abuse. The department can hide fraud by garnishing without a hearing and without first buying an FFELP claim, and by using the Ombudsman Office as a shield, an adversary instead of a complaint department. Loan servicers collect illegal loans anyway. Once the Education Department finds illegal loans, the department still allows them to be collected for the life of the borrower. Americans don't reward criminals and grifters with the spoils of their crime because of what it does to the mind. Dawn of absolute power. With no consumer protections for borrowers, the department exercises absolute power. With bad accounting records, sending forms to hold a hearing is a form of false debt verification that leads to confusion for long periods, a waste of time and money. Lawyers lie for regulators. Lawyers who work for lenders and the Education Department lie for them. This is an area where the department can be assisted with regulating loan servicers. The student loan industry's cozy relationship with the Education Department overrides federal ethics laws that normally prevent lawyers, officers of the court, from lying to the court. Libel and slander uncontrolled. Since the Education Department owns the national database containing the historic record of America's student loan bill, the department is responsible for all reports of federal student loan activity. Publication and discussion of any false debt verifications through false collection agency activity, false credit reports, and false court records is libelous and slanderous permanently because of the internet. Without a formal complaint system, fully manned 24/7, the lies about the educated are uncontrolled. Agents as thick as thieves. Because so many of the department's conflicts of interest are not waived, and there is no formal complaint department, the department's agents have become as thick as thieves. Congress knows of the cozy relationship, but does not act. The Education Department does cut off an occasional limb from the creditor vampires, but knows it would just grow back again and with a new financial product. Uncontrolled fraud, waste, and abuse. The Education Department uses absolute power over consumer protections to ignore the federal laws against fraud, waste, and abuse, to bind borrowers for life while ignoring formal complaints about the financial product. Job threat intentional. When the loan servicer has insufficient documentation to enforce a claim, any contact with the borrower's employer is an intentional job threat. Loan servicers do not treat recordation of the movement of our national treasure as if the claims are so important that there can be no statute of limitations on collection. Yet their work is used to harass borrowers at their place of employment. The loan servicer spouse creates a danger to maintaining employment using false credit reporting and with false debt verifications, and forces borrowers to struggle with a loan made illegally in the first place. The Education Department uses falsified national database records to force employers to obey the department. Loan servicer spouse lies. Americans can't trust the data the Education Department and the loan servicer provide. Marriages normally don't last long when one spouse lies about material things. That's what makes it so painful when the loan servicer spouse lies. No divorce because no constitution. Servant fail, painful. Borrowers will be surprised at how angry they are when these public servants fail them. Borrowers need to prepare themselves to be so surprised. Criminal servants. When the department's agents pretend to know facts based on the national database, such as ownership, or fail to report the department's criminal activity, they join in the crime. Unless or until the national database can be certified, including borrower certification to show a meeting of the minds, use of the database's false information should be considered criminally negligent because it continues loan servicers' fraud and borrowers' pain. No compassionate service. The Education Department agencies have no compassion anymore. Empathy, compassion, and kindness are safety issues. Even lawyers and dentists are required to be compassionate. Poorly trained and prejudiced servants. Borrowers never get sent to the agent best suited to handle their specific inquiry because there is no formal complaint department. The loan program is designed for non discriminatory lending, but is run with prejudice towards schools, lenders, majors, geography, and socioeconomic backgrounds, and so still achieves hurtful discrimination. The student loan program is an active business belonging to the people of the United States that acts only as an adversary to the people of the United States. Slavery begets prejudice. Student loan agents won't improve. Gambling has no cure. Prejudice requires retraining student loan agents to care again. Our homeless population demonstrates how hard it is to teach people to care again. The department has already been proven negligent in overseeing the guarantors hired to be cozy loan servicers. Agent whistleblowers under threat. Whistleblowers won't waste their time being transparent, though encouraged by law to blow the whistle on fraud, waste, and abuse instead of being complicit. Paperwork. The amount of paperwork thrown at borrowers over 10 years requires the expense of a secretary. If borrowers don't keep their student loan paperwork until they die, the Education Department can and does spontaneously create an account based on false and incomplete national database records. Some borrowers place the paperwork burden on their beloved spouse's shoulders, shoulders that may be carrying other student debt now and in the next 10 years. Collection agent degeneration. Collection agents are only hurting themselves to line the pockets of their bosses, profiteers. Collection agents are not necessary to create access to higher education for all Americans or a beautiful life. We are not helping them by giving them a job torturing borrowers because they are emptying their own pockets and the pockets of their own children. Catastrophic failure of imagination. We know that if we ran out of fuel and unemployment rose to 50%, we would still hold college classes by candle, flash, or solar light in a tent or small house or in old classrooms. Unless bullets are being fired, bombs dropped, or land or bodies contaminated, we will educate ourselves on the highest possible level, even on a mystical level, and even under the sea. And student loan creditors will not stop demanding more austerity as tuition rises. Mismanagement incentive for all. Student loans are not a voluntary financial product in America's Hunger Games. They are an education department incentive. Over a 10-year period, borrowers will be tempted to pile on credit card payments to cope with their student loan burden, a borrower incentive. There is no opportunity for borrowers to manage loan servicers, so the loan servicers harass with no controls, a loan servicer incentive. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, CFPB, will place borrowers' complaints in the statistical file, like a petition tally, CFPB's protection incentive. Borrowers' direct action to manage student debt is punished in courts where consumer protections are ignored, courts' incentives. Universities do not stop raising tuition, though they have outpriced over 70% of students already. School incentive. Nearly all men can stand adversity, but if you want to test a man's character, give him power. Abraham Lincoln, American champion.
With states' reduced education budgets, colleges rely on student loans to raise tuition to supplement state budgets. States' incentive. The forgiveness loan product was supposed to save money, but instead would cost all taxpayers, including borrowers. Profiteer incentive. Vaporized middle class. A dark energy is vaporizing the middle class, so that the 400 wealthiest Americans have more wealth, freedom, than half the entire population of America put together. Less than 20% of Americans believe they will have the money to send their children to college, yet tuition continues to rise without caps. Arthur Charles Dickens taught us that when the resource split is so one-sided, the wealth distribution becomes toxic and government gets mean. The student loan bubble is kept inflated by adding more and more of the middle class's future income to it, well past the point of the middle class's financial rigidity. Borrowers are taxed repeatedly. The student loan program is a new mega tax on upward mobility. Borrowers pay taxes on goods and services to get to and from work and to have somewhere to stay while they commute to work. Borrowers pay taxes on the amount they earned. When they fall, borrowers pay taxes on the amount they withdraw from retirement savings. Borrowers pay taxes on savings and investments, including on their retirement savings withdrawals after retirement. Borrowers pay taxes on services that help them cope with taxes and student loan payments. Borrowers pay taxes on the goods, foods, and services that create and manage borrowers' beautiful life at home. But the education tax is now the largest tax. If you agree with even one of these 105 reasons to avoid the student loan program, a student loan is not for you.